When the Dallas Cowboys and Los Angeles Chargers got together Monday night, one thing was assured. At least one fan base would leave the game going, oh my God, I can't believe we lost that game that way again. And here we are, the LA Chargers lose a heartbreaker 20-17 at home, but it did not sound like a home game, Daniel Wade from Locked On Chargers. It sounded very much like we were at Jerry World. So how does this keep happening for Los Angeles, where they play these games tough, they play these teams tough, and if they lose just like this?
Yeah, I mean, it's a story as old as time. You know, Chargers fans know it as chargering. It's always something, but I think for this game specifically brings up, you know, something that's been wrong with them the whole season, which is in late game situations offensively. They can't go win the game. They can't put a game away. They can't ice a game. None of those things they've been able to do. And every game so far this season, they've had a chance in the fourth quarter, whether it was against the Titans to pull away in the fourth and coming up empty, whether it's a chance down by 2 against the Dolphins to go steal a win there, and 2 games against the Raiders and Vikings in which they came up short on 4th and 1 in disastrous situations and got bailed out by red zone turnovers. Late game situations for this team this year have been a total nightmare. And I think it's more symbolic of putting themselves consistently in these situations. They should be about as good as anyone. Dallas hadn't played a 1-score game all season, yet continually in these late game moments, the protection breaks down, things don't go their way.
Yeah, it was a game where the Cowboys were not able to sack Justin Herbert until that last drive, and the pressure finally got to them in a huge spot. Is there something that you can pinpoint and say there is something about the construction of this team that leaves them in these situations, whether I'm not just talking about personnel, I'm talking about coaching? Is there something you can point to and say, okay, this is why this keeps happening?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a cultural thing as well, right? I mean, the Chargers this entire season have been trying to run away as fast as possible from the game last year in the playoffs against the Jacksonville Jaguars, where things got tight late and they weren't able to put them away. And as much as they tried this season, they haven't been able to answer those questions. Even the games that they've won, like we've talked about, I mean, it took end zone interceptions from the Chargers to escape what would be terrible losses, and they continually find themselves in this point. And I think late game, especially recently, the loss of Corey Linsley, a guy that sets up all the protections up front, has been crucial to them. And you know how good Corey Linsley is. That has been a brutal loss for them. But to keep having these situations late, and Justin Herbert didn't have a good game. By his standards, this was one of his worst games so far this season. Probably the worst game I've seen since he suffered the rib cartilage injury last year and had a couple of bad games after that. I mean, if you're looking at just the structure of this team, they've invested a ton in this offensive line, invested way too much to have these things go the way they are in late game situations. The protections are off. The Chargers offensive line in general is not performing well enough. I think they had 7 penalties just on the offensive line in this game. It's frankly not good enough, and it's hard to gauge how much of it is Justin Herbert, you know, having a bad game, and how much of it, even though there was only 1 sack at the end, I think, the first half, it was about a 50% pressure rate by the Cowboys defense. I mean, they were getting in and around them the entire game. Everything's flawed offensively late in games, missing Mike Williams, missing Corey Linsley, and I think it's just making all of their biggest problems spotlighted that much more. This
was supposed to be the Kellen Moore revenge game after he leaves Dallas to come to LA. And you mentioned some of the execution, setting of the protections, these late game moments. You would hope that was when the difference would be made with Kellen Moore. How much of this is, okay, it's early, we're not even to Halloween yet, with that you could say, okay, if this game were played in, you know, post Thanksgiving, it might look different?
Yeah, it's a good question, but I think coming off of your bye week, that's kind of where you're hoping you're making those adjustments, right? Like, you had 2 weeks to prepare for this game. You end up coming out, going down and scoring easily on the first drive. I mean, we know the scripted drives and everything else are a different story, but like, to put up only 7 points in that first half, having as much time and the inside knowledge that you have from Kellen Moore on Dan Quinn and this Cowboys defense he went up against every day, just not good enough. I mean, the first half and the second half of the Raiders game, the Chargers scored 7 points in 4 quarters. That's not good enough. With Justin Herbert, with Kellen Moore, with Keenan Allen, right now getting Austin Eckler back in this game, it's just not good enough. And I mean, you have an offensive line that you've invested in that isn't doing well enough. And just for this team, for Kellen Moore to have this revenge game, I mean, and come up short the way he did, it's not all on him for sure, but it definitely isn't what he was looking for in this game.